Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. The Haru 2024 Banzuke is out and it is time for us to break it down. If you're new to these videos, on the left are my predictions for what was going to happen with the Banzuke, and on the right is the Banzuke itself. The names that are in white are the ones that I got correct. The names that are in any other color are the ones I got wrong. The different colors are just the degree to which I was wrong. As you can see this time, it didn't go so great. But we're going to talk about what decisions were made, why they were made, ones that don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, and try to figure out what these old farts were thinking. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting at the top, just to get it out of the way, there were of course no surprises. Terunofuji is still the Yokozuna, Kirishima, Hoshoryu, Takakeisho listed in order of their records last basho, Kotonowaka, last Ozeki on the list because he's the new one, Daisho moves to Sekiwake 1 East because he is an incumbent Sekiwake. Wakamoto Haru comes back to the rank, he goes second in line. Abi was the only option for Komusubi 1 East. Now, Nishikigi and Asanoyama, they were mathematically tied, so there was a question as to which one was going to get it. Nishikigi being at the edge of the joy, the top 16, 17, 18 guys, the ones who have to fight the Yokozuna and some of the Sanyaku by normal scheduling, he was probably going to have the advantage. He did, in fact, get the Komusubi spot. Also, as I said in the Guess the Banzuke video, I was pretty sure I had Ura and Asanoyama wrong. I put Asanoyama at 1 East just because that was the first thing I thought of, and I knew before the deadline for Guess the Banzuke that it was wrong, but I just didn't go and change it, so that was stupid by me. But there's no surprise here. Ura was ahead, he stayed ahead, a half-ranked demotion for Pinky, 1 East. This basho is still going to be pretty tough coming up. Atami Fuji, correct. There was really nowhere else for him to go but 2 East. And then we get to the first question mark, Meisei or Oho. They were tied by the math, and as they've been doing things, the guys with the better records have been tending to get priority. I didn't think that was going to happen, and part of the reason I thought that was not going to happen was because the JSA, the committee, they just seem sick of Oho's shit. Like, that was what I said. That appears to be what happened. Not just because they put Meisei ahead of Oho, but because of some of the decisions they made further along as well. At the very least, it may be evidence that if you've got two guys who have good records and are tied, the one with the better record may not be quite so guaranteed to get priority. I don't know how much of this is an Oho effect. They're not generally supposed to bear in mind like who the guy is, but we'll move on from here because we need to get to a part where it definitely looks like they took the guy into account when they made their decision. But before we get there, Takano Sho, Hiraumi, Midori Fuji. Now, Tobizaru was so far ahead of these guys mathematically, but at 7 and 8 he couldn't go up, so he was pretty much always locked into Maegashira 4 East. Now, the question appeared to be, is it going to be Midori Fuji or Takano Sho? Both of them calculated to Maegashira 7 East, so we'll write that down here because it's going to matter. So which one do they give it to? Do they give it to the guy who was fighting in the Joy and had a much more difficult schedule, or do they give it to the guy who had a really good record? In the past, they probably would have given it to Midori, to the guy in the Joy. Lately, they seem a lot more likely to give it to the guy with the better record. Well, in this case, yeah, they gave it to the guy with the better record, but they also put Hiraumi in front of Midori Fuji. He calculated to Maegashira 7 West. So what they did, this might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but it's really notable because this is not the kind of decision that the committee makes or has made in the past, much if at all. Hiraumi was only 8 and 7 at Maegashira 8 West, so he barely had a Kachikoshi at a middling rank. He didn't do amazing. Midori Fuji was 5 and 10, but he was way up the Banzuke. He had to fight all of the monsters, and he was still a half a rank ahead of Hiraumi, mathematically. When you do all the calculations, he should have been ahead of Hiraumi. So the only rationale, the only explanation for this is that they said, Midori, you will go -3. Minimum. You will go -3. We're not going to let you get away with less of a demotion than that, which is definitely a bigger minimum quote-unquote demotion than they've shown for 5 and 10 people in the past, but especially in a situation where there are so many gaps to fill. Why did they feel so compelled to bring an 8 and 7 guy up even further. And yeah, it's only half a rank compared to where I thought he was going to end up, compared to the most logical landing place for him, but it's still kind of mind-blowing. Hiraumi did not do anything to deserve that special treatment. The only rationale is that they said Midori has to go down X amount. He has to. We are not happy with him only going down not just 1.5, but even 2.5. 2.5 rank demotion on a 5 and 10 record is not weird. It's light, but it's not unusual. It's happened plenty of times in the past. They said no this time. Okay, it is what it is. Takanosho goes to 3 West off of his 10 and 5 record at Maegashira 12. If his knee holds up, he'll probably be okay, but this is probably going to be a somewhat difficult basho for him. Hiraumi gets bumped up a little further than expected and is probably going to get his ass beat left, right, and center if anyone gets hurt and he ends up with a full Sanyaku schedule. And Midori Fuji, maybe they did him a favor, really, because in the Joy he does not do that well. But at 5 East, he might have an easy enough schedule that he can see a little more success this time. And now we get to Golden Boy Central. I know Natto calls Hoshoryu Golden Boy, but come on. Onosato. He was Maegashira. We can look on the left here. He was Maegashira 15. He went 11 and 4. 11 and 4, generally a 7 rank jump. He is now Maegashira 5 West. He went up 10 ranks. He got a 3 rank over promotion. And if the situation calls for it, that's fine. No problem. This situation did not call for it at all. What the hell is going on here? Number 1. First of all, the math. Kinbozan was 7 and 8 and Maegashira 6 East. So his math puts him at 7 East, right? Well, look at all the guys who are now ahead of him. Tsurugisho was 9 and 6 at 11 East. So mathematically, he goes to 8 East. Gonoyama, he also goes to 8 East. One of the questions was which one of them is going to get preference. I said Gonoyama, obviously I was incorrect. But the real question was, well, it looks like they're going to have to split these guys around Kinbozan, because Kinbozan's a whole rank ahead of them. They can't just put him behind them, can they? And in fact, if they were going to insist on giving him some kind of a demotion, what would make more sense would be to put, okay, so they put Tsurugisho ahead of Gonoyama. So you put Tsurugisho at 5 West, Gonoyama at 6 East, and Kinbozan at 6 West, and then he gets a 0.5 rank demotion, a half a rank demotion. That's fine. If they were like, no, we don't want to split up Tsurugisho and Gonoyama, that's not fair. We want Kinbozan to get some kind of demotion, otherwise it doesn't seem fair. Never mind, we just did that for Tobizaru, but whatever. They could have done this. They could have just done a half rank little shift for everybody. Why did they feel compelled to bring Onosato all the way up from, well, my guess was 8 East. Takayasu and Hokuto Fuji, I was wrong. They were pushed further down, but even if you take them out of the way, he's at best gonna land at Maegashira 7 East. Why did they push him ahead of those 3 guys? From 15 West, you go 11 and 4. 7 ranks, that puts you at Maegashira 8 West. That's behind all of them. It's not by a lot, but it is behind all of them. What prompted them to say, nope, you know what, Onosato, send him to the front of the line? We'll clear that out, but what are the different logical threads here? Okay, Midori Fuji, they said, no, you will go -3. Gonoyama, he was at Maegashira 3 East. So 3 ranks for him would have been 6 East. So they could have done Tsurugisho over, Gonoyama over, Kinbozan up, and that would have fit the bill. No reason, if you're going to give him that 3 rank demotion, to bring Onosato up. Okay, well, they wanted to move him down further. Whatever. But in that case, why did you insist on Kinbozan getting that full rank demotion? What did Kinbozan do? I mean, are they just mad at him too? Are they like, no, we're sick of your shit for some? I don't know what he could have done. And this is pulling the feelings of the committee about the wrestlers personally into this. And I really don't want to do that. I don't want to get into these guessing games. I don't want to get into these, well, there's these politics involved, because I'm not in the room. I don't have access to these people. I don't know what they're thinking. I want to stay out of all that. But there's no explanation for this. There's no explanation for this at all. Even if you wanted Kinbozan to go down 1 rank, he's going down, screw it. and you wanted Gonoyama to go down -3, screw it. You could still put Tsurugisho here, Gonoyama here, and then Onosato at 6 West. Why did he have to go ahead of everybody? This makes no sense. I don't even know what this is. This is inexplicable. Nobody got this right, I fucking guarantee you, and if they did, they probably got a ton of other stuff wrong because they were dartboarding their guesses. Also bear in mind, Onosato, Tamawashi, and Onisho were all in a line. Onosato, 11 and 4 is 7 ranks, 7.5. Tamawashi, 8 and 7 is 1 rank, 1.5. Onisho, 10 and 5 is 5 ranks, 5.5. They were all next to each other. They were all mathematically set to be next to each other. And Tamawashi and Onisho are next to each other. Why is Onosato a full rank and a half above where he would have been in that if they had kept that order? It's got to be some kind of mix of, well, we really have every reason to push Gonoyama down and Kinbozan down because we want to get the people with losing records out of the way. Onosato looks like he's the future of the sport. Let's just get him up there faster. There's really no explanation for this that doesn't include, we want Onosato moving up the charts. And putting him at 5 West is probably not an accident. 5 West is enough that he will get some Sanyaku opponents, especially if he's doing well, or if a lot of guys get injured, but he won't be set up to have many or really any Sanyaku opponents with his natural schedule if he just does fine. I don't think any other wrestler ends up in this position. So this is probably not something to take as an example of what'll happen in the future. This is the Onosato special. I cannot imagine it happened any other way than that. Moving on from there, so I said Takayasu and Hokuto Fuji because of all the gaps to be filled and because these 3 guys were going to have a slight over promotion anyway, that it would make a lot of sense for Takayasu and Hokuto Fuji to end up at Maegashira 7. I was wrong. They got bumped down to 8 West and 9 East. So with them there, Tamawashi and Onisho fill the gaps at 7 West and 8 East very logically. That all makes sense. As I said in the Guess the Banzuke video, where Takayasu and Hokuto Fuji go, if you get those right, you're probably going to do really well. If you get those wrong, you're probably not going to do so well. I got them wrong. This whole thing got messed up. It's like the Onosato choice is just shoveling more dirt on the grave. Let's go on. Kota Shoho and Shodai were lined up very easily at 9 West and 10 East. There was never really a doubt that that's where they would go. It was the only thing that made sense. Mitakeumi Ichiyamamoto and Sada no Umi, Shona no Umi. These guys were tied. These were all losing records. It was a 6-9 versus 5-10 and a 6-9 versus 4-11. I guessed that the 6 and 9s would get it. I don't know if my logic was correct, that it was because they've shown more game at higher levels in the past, that Ichiyamamoto and Shona no Umi look like guys who should be at a lower rank, or if they did it for completely different reasons. These were very much 50-50 picks though. If you got them right, good for you. We did awesome. If you got them wrong, I mean, it was really a vibes thing in the end. No sweat. Shimizu Umi, Ryuden, and Chura no Umi were all tied. I guess Shimizu Umi would be in front because he had the winning record. That ended up being correct. They decided in this case that Chura no Umi needed to get demoted. Alright, fine, he needed to get demoted. If he was coming up with an 8 and 7, they probably would have put Ryuden behind him, I think. But in this case, they slipped him back to half rank, put Ryuden in front. Cool, whatever. That was one that could go either way. Either option would have made sense. They went with this. It's okay. Nishiki Fuji and Kitana Waka were always set to go to Maegashira 14. There weren't really any options there. And then the bottom. And this one is as WTF as the Onosato thing. Although it's a little more complicated why it's so WTF. So first, let me go through what I think was going to happen. In case you didn't watch the Guess the Banzuke video, I'll be brief. Basically, in the past, guys who come up from way near the bottom of Juryo, like Juryo 10, even if mathematically they're ahead of other guys who are also being promoted into Makuuchi, sometimes they'll be put behind them. And I really struggled with whether they were going to do that with Takeru Fuji. I ended up putting him in front because Roga and Dayamami only calculated to just getting into the division, specifically to Maegashira 17 East. Since they would have to be over-promoted to end up ahead of Takeru Fuji, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was wrong. That's fine. It was always a possibility, and they put him behind those two. That part's no big deal. Here's what doesn't make any sense. Myogiryu and Endo. So Midori Fuji was Maegashira 2, right? And they're like, nope, you're going down 3. We're going to take a guy who barely had a Kachikoshi at Maegashira 8. We're going to put him ahead of you, even though he should be behind you, because we need you to go down. Gonoyama. They're like, nope, we're not leaving you in any position where you don't get at least 3 ranks of demotion. Myogiryu and Endo. In the last year, they have consistently taken guys in Makuuchi and demoted them as far as they can and brought the Juryo guys up above them. Myogiryu and Endo were going to be under-demoted to stay in the division, but they were really the only options to stay in the division. That's why I had Myogiryu at 16 West and Endo at 17 East. You see here, -4, -3.5. They were gonna be under-demoted, so there's no reason to push them up further. But I bring up the Midori thing and the Gonoyama thing because by putting them in these spots, they started a rank apart and now they're also a rank apart here, but it's only 2.5 ranks. It's only a 2.5 rank demotion. Why did they do that for these guys of all people? What did they do to earn that? I get that Takeru Fuji was coming way up. So it doesn't seem right to take guys who are at Juryo 1 and Juryo 3 and push them behind him. Okay, fine, whatever. But to move these guys down only 2.5 ranks, when you have guys who had far tougher schedules in a spot where way bigger gaps need to be filled, pushing them down even further makes no sense. The logic between what they did at the start and what they did at the end is completely disconnected. And maybe that's the nature of the Banzuke discussion. Maybe they're like, we're vibing this way at the start, and then the next day when we come back to finish it off, we're like, dude, I don't care. They're feeling completely differently. Maybe it's because Myogiryu and Endo are longtime veterans and they're trying to give these guys every opportunity to stay in the division. But again, as with the guess about Oho, as what appears to have happened with Onosato, this is getting into personality politics. This is getting into, we are trying to do right or not so right by certain people because of who they are. Maybe this is always how the Banzuke creation has been, but it very much feels in those cases like a UFC vibe. Like, this guy's really good, and this guy is almost as good, but we're gonna put the almost as good guy ahead because he's more interesting, or maybe he has more potential, or people are more interested in seeing him. None of that has to do with their ability. As I've gotten into the sport, as I've studied this stuff, it's always looked like whatever they take into consideration, they keep the nameplates off, but maybe that was never the case, or maybe it was and they've just stopped. I don't know. But Myogiryu and Endo are pretty popular, they've been around for a long time, and they got saved in a surprising way. Onosato is the future. He got bumped up in a really surprising way. And Oho is a catastrophe most of the time. And he got slightly knocked back in a way that just didn't happen to anyone else that did as well as he did. Anyway, that's the breakdown. What'd you think? Am I completely off on some of the logic here? What do you think about this idea of the committee taking the who and not just the numbers into consideration? Do you think they've always done it? Do you think it's a new thing? Do you think they should? Do you think they shouldn't? Hit the comments, let me know. By the way, I appreciate all the positive feedback from the comments on the bullying video a couple of days ago. There were a few negative comments. The ones that were actually connected to the topic, I left up. If you didn't see them and you want to go use those people as piñatas, you are welcome to. A couple I deleted because it wasn't just that they were negative, but they seemed really disconnected from what I had been saying, and I thought they got too off track. If you wrote one of those, it's nothing personal, but there are some fights I just don't want to see started in my comments section. That's really what it comes down to. Just under 2 weeks until the Basho. Book review's being finished up, tier list is gonna come, and I'm hoping to have the Kotonowaka breakdown done a few days before the Basho starts if possible. 50-50 on that right now, we'll see. So go find your friends, talk some Banzuke, have a great day, and I will see you soon.